Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about Amtrak travel. Really, this is something a lot of us have done. Cruise lines, we've done trains, rail travel. We love that too. But Amtrak is something that we've been going, hey, this is a way to travel the country, not have to drive. Apparently, they even have Wi-Fi on board. There's food and snacks. And you can get off at different destinations. It may be a whole new way of road tripping. Who knows? We're going to find out all about it today. We have David Kriso joining us. He is a travel writer and lecturer. You can go to his website, dektraveljournal.com. But welcome, David. How are you?
How you doing, Lisa?
Doing good, doing good. Amtrak travel, this seems to be a very cool way to get around the country. In fact, I know couple of friends, I've actually picked them up at Amtrak depots and things like that. And they're like, it depends on, you could actually it's almost like booking a airplane ticket in a way about what level of luxury you want, right?
Yes. And I've been an Amtrak traveler since I was 5 years old. I've been an Amtrak Guest Awards member since 2001. I've been taking the train to and from college my entire 4 years, and even during my alumni years. And I went to college in Rhode Island in Newport, and getting on and off in Kingston, which is a historic depot. And it's just there's such an aura to train travel as opposed to the airlines and driving and other modes of getting around the country. There's something special about it.
So is it actually a train? Like when we think about it, I always thought it was not quite the train, but it's a train. It is a train, huh?
Yes, but Amtrak adds an aura to it. Their onboard service has been amazing. The staff is far friendlier than the airlines themselves. If you're on a plane and you get knocked into by the stewardess's cart, yeah, that puts a mark on you. But just sometimes you're not surrounded by friendly service on the planes. But when you're on the train, everyone is very welcoming. Everyone's very helpful, and it just gives that sense that you belong on board.
Yeah. So I think every destination is different. Every person in service staff is different, and we've been on plane rides that have been positive. But I also think there's I think it's a nostalgia thing in a way with train travel. Yet at the same time, our country is going through and not just our country, but the world, and depending on where you are in the world, has modified. I'm trying to think, even from when we lived in Africa to being in Europe, train travel was a normal way of travel. And our country had that as a normal way, then kind of got into cars and everything. And of course, there's air travel, but it's kind of interesting as now with climate change and sustainability being at the forefront of what we do as travelers and as the tourism destinations. I think that Amtrak is kind of at that point of it's nostalgia, but it's also something that we could look on to being a better, more sustainable traveler. What would you say on that? But it is nostalgic in a way because of the car industry.
The one remark I must share with you is that I've been to Italy. My mom's relatives live in northern Italy near Milan, and I've been to Rome, been to Florence. All by train. I've been on the Italian high-speed train, the Pendolino, which Amtrak Acela is loosely based on. And in Europe, all across Europe, passenger travel takes precedence over freight train travel, and the freight service takes the back seat. Here in the U.S., freight takes precedence over passenger. So if you're traveling outside the Northeast Corridor route and in between Boston and Washington, if you're heading down to Point South, once you're past Washington D.C., you're on freight tracks, and or even if you're going out to Pittsburgh on the Pennsylvanian, you're also on freight tracks. So if a freight train needs to get around you, yeah, your train's got to stop and wait. But you just hope that doesn't have to happen. But still, getting around by the train is always the best way to go.
Well, in the train too. I mean, you get to see the scenery of towns and communities. Sometimes you go through cities, rural areas, industrial areas. Um, and, like I was saying, we're not taking cars, so it's a little bit more sustainable that so many more people can be in one place going somewhere. But does it for you, like as a kid, I know you've been traveling since a kid, cruise lines, Amtrak, all of that. Do you kind of get that excitement of like, I'm going on a train journey? Who knows? I can just sit at the window and look out. Do you get that excitement?
I always look forward to it, always, because my last train trip, I just went up to Kingston, Rhode Island. I went to visit my alma mater, Salve Regina University in Newport. They were having a Christmas alumni function on campus, and it was my first time back on campus at Christmas time in 24 years. And Newport is a gorgeous town during the Christmas time. And taking the train up there and just seeing the New England countryside, just, at this time of the year, there's an aura to it. I'll say it again. Winter time on the train there's a special feel to it. And when you're looking out that window, you really feel it.
That's interesting. And then when you think about too, getting to the destinations that you're going to hop off of, I think it's a little easier now. I mean, you got to think back in old school rail days. And I always talk about it because I know people who are into trains and train travel. Like this is a very dedicated group of folks that are like 100% in or more beyond that, right? And I know that train rail historians, it's like, I mean, you've got to think of it shaped America, in a different way. It changed, I wouldn't say shaped, but changed how we got things, how industry and the Industrial Revolution happened. It changed things on how, the East got to the West. I mean, even our national park system that we have today wouldn't be in existence without rail because of the artists like Thomas Moran who had to take his paintings across the country back east to show people, hey, this is what we are seeing in Yosemite and Yellowstone, and took these giant paintings and was only by rail to get there, that he could show those. And it was, because photography wasn't that quick at that point. You know what I mean? It's not like what we have now. So
he didn't have social media.
No, we didn't have all that. And it was so, it's such a huge part of, I know even mining camps, like Tombstone, Arizona, where the OK Corral shooting happened, right? Very famous shoot up happened of the old Wild West. But they were sitting in tents eating oysters from San Francisco, and that's because of the train system. And then there were towns in the West that even changed their name, like Yerington, Nevada, changed their name to Yerington to try to pander to Yerington, Mr. Yerington, using his name to get him to bring the train to their town. So it's kind of interesting when we look at the history of railroads and how, communities really wanted it, didn't they, to get them there. And so now here we are with Amtrak, where you can literally do a road trip, like a rail trip across America. I think you could plan it as a family.
You can go to AmtrakVacations.com, and there are a whole series of inclusive packages available. You can go to New York City. You can go to the Grand Canyon. You can go anywhere in the country where these natural wonders are located, and they're all inclusive packages, and the train tickets included, and whichever one that floats your boat, go right ahead and just book it, and you're all set to go.
Too, the other thing, so they have these packages, right? But then the National Park Service, how I kind of there's a couple of reasons I got into the whole idea of Amtrak was where we started our magazine, like almost 30 years ago, was in Encinitas, California, out in,
Hmm.
San Diego area. And they have an Amtrak station. And then there was a bullet train coming through and people are all like hesitant, but, it also worked. I mean, people could come in and Carlsbad, I think, has a depot. I'm trying to think back, but people could come into a historic downtown community, literally walk off the train and be in a downtown where there's hotels, where there's shopping, restaurants, not even have to get a car. Back in those days, we had to do cabs, not Ubers. But you've got to think now, even if you're not doing the special packages, you can get to a destination, get your luggage, and get an Uber or,
Yeah,
whatever pretty easy, right?
yeah. I remember when my back in April 1990, my family we went to Las Vegas, and then we flew to San Diego, and then from San Diego we took Amtrak San Diego. From San Diego Union Station, we went from there to Fullerton, which is just minutes outside Disneyland, and we stayed at the Disneyland Hotel and flew home from LAX. But I tell you, San Diego Station is a beautiful station. Um, and I
Mm,
that was a station I've never seen in a long time. It's one of those Spanish themed
hmm
stations of the West. I've seen Chicago Union Station. I've been to Newark Penn, been to Washington's Union Station, but to seeing the stations out there in the West, there's a special feel to them. There's a flavor that they really sport.
mm. Well, yeah, yeah, because it is a Western style and sometimes it's Spanish, like hacienda style. And, um, and it was
Exactly.
back in the day, we had the plazas, when a train depot came through, it was a plaza. And, Tucson, Arizona was one of our friends came through there and picked him up from Amtrak. He came in from near the Bay Area, um, on Amtrak to Tucson, and I picked him up. He was about to hike the Arizona Trail, and so we picked him up early in the morning, cussed him out for how early it was, but it was okay. And he's just like, I met all these people on this train and this and that, and he had all kinds of train stories. So does that happen for you as a travel writer, like seeing what happens on a train? Because, you're not driving, you kind of you're not in control of things. And at that time, you know that you're there as a passenger to enjoy and trust in what's going to happen. And do you see people kind of relax and start to communicate as fellow
Oh yes,
travelers?
definitely. And I think the number one the best thing about train travel versus the airplane is three words: no cabin pressure.
Mm,
When when they pressurize the cabin, so when you're at a high altitude, and then when you're landing, your ears hurt. That doesn't happen when you're on the train. When you're arriving at your destination, your ears don't hurt. That's the best
mm.
part. I mean, you're going from point to point without any pain in your ears.
Do people communicate with each other and talk?
And
Yeah.
it depends on who's nearby. I like the quietness on the train now.
Oh,
It's just that because you can be in one car where you have maybe 10 rows ahead of you with nobody there. You could have maybe three more rows of nobody behind you, but that's perfectly fine.
mm.
Perfectly
So,
fine. I mean, you could have a very busy travel day like Christmas or Thanksgiving, where you have a full car. But at other times of the year, you may have a half full car, and it just makes the trip all that more pleasurable.
nice. And then, okay, so I've heard that you can have Wi-Fi aboard. Is that true?
Yes, there is.
No way, dude. So I could sit. like our whole, Nancy and I travel full time across the country. We're in the car. So like we could just, because we've said this, what if we just ditch the car? Like, and I can't say that because she's a good car and she's listening to me. I know, I have a relationship with my car, and just went Amtrakking. We've said this, like, what would that look like if we just said, hey, we're Amtrakking and get an Uber or go rent a car when you get to a destination. Like we could do that and work as we travel instead of me driving. Do you think that that could actually be a possibility?
Oh yeah, I can't doubt that because some time ago I had this grandiose idea of a coast to coast and a coast to coast and back journey that I had in mind, taking the Lakeshore Limited from New York City, Penn Station to Chicago overnight, and then getting off at Union Station, Chicago, switching over to the Southwest Chief to go from Chicago to Los Angeles, and then possibly stay overnight in LA, and then take the Coast Starlight from LA to Seattle, and then get off in Seattle, stay overnight again, and then take the Empire Builder and go Seattle, Chicago, and then stay overnight again in Chicago, rest the legs a little bit, and then go from Chicago to Washington on the Capital Limited, and then once arriving in Washington, take a Northeast Regional or a Acela train back to Newark, New Jersey, which is near my home. So it's like a 10-day trip.
Wow. Wow. Because I was looking at going like, we go through all kinds of hurdles on the road. And then it's like, hey, you're on there, but what are the facilities like? Okay, because you have two posts on your site right now that people can go read just on the food and drink. I mean, you can have your wine and your cheese on the Amtrak. I'm just saying, from what I could get
Right.
from David's articles, you can go to dektraveljournal.com. So, like, we can be well fed and wined on the Amtrak, right?
Yes, the cafe cars they have the cafe car has an extensive menu, and my personal favorite is the cheese and cracker tray, and you can chase that down with a small bottle of Covet or whatever wine selection they have, or one of their beers on board, and you got it made there. Or choose from a whole series of sandwiches that they have on the menu. My other suggestion to Amtrak passengers out there, if you've not been, if you've ever been traveling on any other route, like on the Vermonter, or if you're going on a really long, all day, long distance run, okay, the cafe car doesn't have to be your best friend the whole time. What you should do is pack additional nourishment. Go to your local supermarket, go to the deli case, and fill up on all those little meat and cheese morsel things, and and bring that in a refrigerator in a cooler bag with an ice pack, and you can keep that nearby your luggage. And when you get to your destination, make sure you look for another supermarket or convenience place and restock for the trip home.
Oh, wow. So you're allowed to bring food on board, like, honestly.
You can, because when I went to Pittsburgh, I knew I was going to be on that train for 9 hours, in both directions. So I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of other stuff available.
Okay. So that's cool, though.
So you should always just bring additional stuff with you, because the cafe car, it doesn't have it does have plenty of choices, but supplies do run low. Also, let's say you have medical needs or dietary needs. That's why you should bring your own nourishment. And more so, also when you are changing engines somewhere, like if you're going to points south of Washington, or if you're changing engines in New Haven, Connecticut, and you're going to St. Albans, Vermont, or you're going to the slopes, or wherever you may be changing engine power from electric to diesel, diesel electric. In that sense, when they change engines, the power throughout the train goes out for at least 20 minutes. So the cafe car, they make the announcement that the cafe car is not going to be available for that amount of time. They're going to shut it down. They're going to close it down for inventory purposes, and also when they're changing engines, there's no power throughout the train consist until the train's ready to depart again. So unless you want to go into the station and go to one of the restaurants and take something to go, you can do that, but at your own risk, because you don't want to go back to the tracks and see that your train's gone. You want to make sure that
this is
have your stuff with you.
Yeah, that's important that you say this too, because I think, there's people I know that are diabetic and they need to do things at a certain time. It's like, if, you know what I mean, food wise or, medical wise, not just diabetics, but there's people who have to have timely things. But when they're changing engines, like you say, are you getting off the actual train itself and moving to a different train? Or do you stay on the
changing
same
engine, you stay on board. But when you're changing engines, like if you're going once you get to a certain point where you hear the electric engine, they can only go to a certain point, and then the rest of the route is diesel powered.
See, but I think a lot of us don't realize that they're electric engines. You know what I mean? Like
between Boston and Washington, the trains are run on electric power, and then on all the routes they're diesel powered. So if you're changing engines and you're going to Philadelphia and going to Pittsburgh on the Pennsylvania, and you're changing engines in Philadelphia at 30th Street Station, or even at Union Station, Washington, when they're changing engine power, you want to stay in the train. Do not wander far. And that's why you should just have your own bag of nourishment with you and don't wander far from the train, because the train will leave on time.
Like cruise ships do that too. If you don't get back on the boat, you're too bad. Have some responsibility as a traveler, right?
Well, I've been working in the cruise line industry for 14 years part-time. I work at the cruise terminal in New York City. I've worked at the Cape Woodley terminal in Bayonne. And I've seen guests showing up at the terminal too close to call, thinking that they're going to get on board. But no, if you're not there by at least an hour prior to sailing, you're done.
Wow. So it's hardcore, real. I know we almost missed our cruise in the Bahamas. We got delayed on something, and we were having too much of a good time, being typical happy travelers. Wow. We were having a good time.
Same thing when you're at ports of call. If you're not back on board at least an hour prior, they tell you to be on board at least 30 minutes. You want to be back on board at least about an hour before. Give yourself time.
Yeah, we had to run. We were running to get back on our ship, like running as they were about to ring that bell. Like we were that split second. And boy, did we feel like idiots. Like we really felt like we're so stupid, because you can't, things run on schedule. And yes, things can happen and delay things like weather and technical issues and things like that. But human traveler changing things, that's not cool. They're not going to, because the whole system derails. I don't like to say that word. That was not the right word, but it is a ripple effect, because everything has a system, especially on the rails, more than anything, because there's only so many rails, right? So if you delay one train, the next train is delayed, right? So it kind of has that ripple effect.
Early this morning, a gasoline tanker on the highway right near my home, it crashed into a pole and blew up, and the flames and the smoke, and the smoke was getting in the way of the trains on the Georgia Transit line right nearby, so trains were delayed just because of that fire.
and that's going to, but it's going to delay everybody in travel. I don't care if you're flying, you know what I mean? That's the thing. I don't want, it's not, don't not do train travel over what we're talking about. We're saying that's a normal thing, but it's same as an airplane. And in your car, oh my gosh, you could be on, and we travel full time, and half of the time it's like, oh, 15 more minutes to your destination, and it takes you 6 hours because of a car accident ahead of you.
Yeah,
And if you're lucky to sit in the 6 hours, you should be saying your prayers and being blessed because you didn't, you know, you weren't in the wreck, you know. So a
yeah.
delay, sometimes you've got to be thankful for delays. As travelers, we always look at that as much as we, kind of cuss under our breath. Honestly, be grateful that you weren't in the actual issue. Let's put it
Exactly.
that way, right?
Well, I just remember my family, we drove to Washington D.C. in the fall of '87, and since then we look back at that, never again. That was absolute hell because we thought like, oh, it's gonna be 4 hours. Yeah, it took us 7.5 because you got caught up in traffic in Philadelphia, got caught up in traffic in the Baltimore metropolitan area, and it just slowed you down longer than it was going to speed you up.
Yeah.
So our next our trip down was on the Metroliner Memorial Day weekend of '88, and I tell you that was a far better experience than being caught in traffic.
Yeah, at least you're cozy. That's the thing. You're cozy. If you're on a train, you've got like you're set up, you're cozy versus packed up in a car. You can't go to the bathroom. Let's just be real. If you're in a car, if you're saying, listen, I've seen some weird stuff on the road and and all of a sudden you think, oh, I got to go to the next rest area or I got to go pee at the next gas station. Well, guess what? Now you are going to sit in a delay and you're sitting there and you're going, how long can this last? On a train, you can at least go to the bathroom, right? you
Yeah,
know, I know that sounds funny and weird, but listen, as travelers, we deal with this kind of thing because it's not like you're at home. You can't just get up and go to the bathroom. And that's the reality of
right.
travel is being, I know people are going, why are we talking about this on the air? Well, it's real. It's
The, the,
absolutely a
the
true
fun part is
thing.
when you're using the restrooms on board, you have to sort of learn how to keep yourself still.
Oh, on the
Because
train?
when you're going over switch points or what they call
Ha
frogs,
ha. Oh,
those vibrations can kind of cause you to lose your footing a little bit. So you gotta try to keep your footing and keep your aim.
oh. Well, I think for you guys, that's going to be a little harder than us ladies. But then at the same time, that's funny because it is true. But that's the joy of travel, right? Is having you've given me the giggles for the day now, David. Like seriously, what got you started in, I mean, obviously you and your family growing up, you've done a lot of travel, be it train travel, cruises, but what led you to go, hey, I'm going to start writing about this and, being a speaker? What led you into that arena?
It all started in August 2011. I remember I remember being a member of Amtrak's Student Advantage program when I was in college. And as long as you're a member, you get 10% off on your ticket fare if you're a college student. So it was August of that year. I thought of college. The high school kids, they just graduated. They're heading to college for the first time. They need to know about this program before they go spending top dollar on their fare. They should know. They should know about this program so that way they can save on every trip that they make to and from home.
Mm,
So I
that's
wrote this
cool.
story for my hometown's newspaper called The Observer. It's no longer around, but the story was a smash hit, and everybody around town was talking about it. And everyone when I was going on a walk, everyone's like, "Hey, look, it's a journalist."
Oh.
So everyone read that story. Everyone who was subscribed to the Observer around my town, everyone was saying, "Nice work, dude."
So people
And
you got
I kind of
recognition,
opened
yeah.
eyes on that.
Yeah, it kind of let you know where your some worth, value of what you put out there because you were helping people. And so you obviously got value of helping people through writing and letting them know insights and knowledge about it. But it seems that you've been a fan of Amtrak for almost your whole life. I mean, it seems to
Yeah,
really
my
run in your body,
it,
literally.
it all started with my dad went to college in the DC area. He went to the University of Maryland for undergrad, and then he got his medical degree at Georgetown. And then back in 1984, I believe, my parents took my brother and I to Washington for the very first time. And I tell you, it was a wonderful experience. And I remember that very morning we were at Newark Penn Station here in New Jersey, and just before our train pulls through, one of Pennsylvania's old GG1s rolled through the station, and it was a happening.
Mm.
It was just, if you ever seen the GG1, it's a beautiful engine. It's the it's one of the most spoken about locomotives in American railroad history. And
Huh.
it ran on the rails for 53 years. And but I tell you, but Union Station is one of my favorite stations ever. It's Washington's Union Station. It's beautiful. And
Do you get when you go to a station, right? So, we've covered a lot, like gone to a lot of stations, and things have happened over the years to stations. And there's something, there's one in Erie, Pennsylvania, we were in a few years back during COVID, right? And the
mhm.
station area actually became like a set of they kept the building, the depot, and there's a brewery that opened up there, which was very cool. And we interviewed the guy while we were there. We got, I mean, the people that came through this station, that's why I bring it up with you. Lincoln came through his, Babe Ruth came through there, and they had paintings to represent them. And he tried really hard to keep the history of this station there. And that's where it kind of made me really think about these stations like Amtrak. And, it's just when you're in these stations, the one in Tucson, while we were waiting for our friend a few years back, I remember going, God, if only we knew everyone who came through these stations. And sometimes historians know, and, Lincoln famously, his body went through on a train across the country, it was like a traveling wake for Abraham Lincoln. So I
Mhm.
wonder about that when you go to these stations, which are sometimes so elaborate, right? The architecture, like in the West, it's more like the mission style of what the West is. And then you've got also the history of like the Harvey House girls and hospitality. So we've got this like these stations represent tourism throughout these years, right? This history. It's a history of tourism and hospitality. The Harvey House girls to me are like a whole other fascinating history of that. But like when you're in these stations, do you think about who walked through these stations at times in history? Like
Well,
that nostalgia?
I it not much, but I tell you, I'm being at Kingston Station. I have memories of the station when I first saw it when I was a freshman in college. The place was an absolute dive. It was gaudy. It was skeevy looking. It was run down.
Hmm.
And then they finally they started renovations on the station itself, and that's when they started reconstructing that whole northern area, the Northeast Corridor, and to get that line electrified for the when the Acela was coming around, and so they revitalized the station. It looks beautiful now, and you can finally sit in the waiting room. Back then you couldn't; it was disgusting. But one other station that really I urge anyone to visit is New York City's new Penn Station, the Moynihan Train Hall.
Hmm.
If you ever visited New York City, in the old Penn, in the Penn Station that, after they tore down the old Penn Station, which was built in 1913, and it was torn down in the mid 60s. But then from that point on, the station that was there for 53 years underneath Madison Square Garden, it was gaudy, it was crowded, it was cramped. It didn't feel like a station at all. It was just
Wow.
it was just a joke. Everyone, are you kidding me? This is what they envisioned. Well, finally, in January 2021, they completed the new station, which is in the old Farley Post Office right across from Madison Square Garden, and it's a train station. Finally, it's a train station that New York is long overdue for. Long Island Railroad and Amtrak both share it, and NJ Transit operates from its original wing underneath Madison Square Garden with a connecting walking corridor underneath 8th Avenue, but still, the new Penn Station, Moynihan Hall, is gorgeous. It's got a large waiting area. It's got the Metropolitan Lounge upstairs for those who have sleeping car accommodations. It's like a first class lounge for all sleeping car and first class passengers on a Acela, with a full service buffet, a cash bar, charging stations for electronic devices, luggage storage space. Oh my God, Lisa! I visited this with my brother not long ago. Wow,
Cool.
this is. I mean, that is a station that what a station should be.
That's cool to hear. Yeah.
It's
It's,
a train terminal with all the modern luxury you imagined.
I think it's important, and I think we want Wi-Fi everywhere as travelers. We want Wi-Fi, you know, um, because honestly, if there's no Wi-Fi, half the time you don't have data either. That's what I've learned. It's like your phone doesn't work if they don't put a tower in there. So is connectivity good when you're in these, depots and waiting for your next train? Is the connectivity usually okay? I mean,
Oh
even just
yeah,
basics, I'm not saying that we should be able
it's
to,
not the it's not the Hope Diamond, but you're getting decent service.
that's what I'm saying. At least to just get by, check a couple emails, that kind of thing. I'm not saying, hey, we're going to produce a major video or something, on a train, but I kind of find it fascinating. I mean, now, do you watch train movies? Like movies with people on trains
I
and
had
stuff
a
like,
whole collection. I used to get
I knew it.
I I'm I used to get these train videos from a train film publication company called Pentrax, and I had this one video on Chicago railroads, one on the Northeast Corridor, one on the Empire Corridor, on Amtrak's Empire Corridor, a cab ride on Amtrak's Metroliner, Santa Fe's Mojave Division,
Oh,
Santa
wow.
Fe's.
Yeah.
Oh, I had at
Oh,
least 40 videos.
okay. The Mojave. So Kelso Depot. Kelso
I
Depot.
believe so, and Tehachapi Loop out in the west.
Back in the day, like, so Kelso Depot is out in the Mojave Desert, and it is
Right.
between, you can go from 29 Palms up to Vegas through there, and there's this depot. It is part of the Mojave National Trails Recreation Area, so it's part of our National Park Service and BLM land and everything. And when you are there, and the Harvey House girls were out there years ago, and this is all a huge part, very close to Death Valley and everything. And when you are there, we actually went to the dedication of this being they redeveloped the depot. They revamped it and restored it, and put in a visitor center kind of thing for the National Park Service. And at that time, what was crazy is the outside of the depot, like literally where the tracks are, is a jail cell. And no, there is. And the cell is outdoors. So if you were a criminal and you were back in the old school days of travel, they would hold you up in this jail cell. And I'm looking at this going, I know this land very well. a park person. Lived in the desert, and you had scorpions, you had snakes that would do whatever the heck they wanted. But you're talking temperatures that are Death Valley temperatures. And no matter, and when it's winter, dude, you're done. But that's where they held them. And so to me, this was like this. Everybody's like, oh, how lovely. We're going to go through the desert, have a lovely drive to the desert and see this depot. And I'm going, dude, look at this. Like, this is what they did back then. I mean, it's pretty amazing the history that goes on with railroads, because what they had to have a holding cell. It wasn't, but people would have to spend overnight because you're in the middle of nowhere at that time. I mean, now we've changed up things a whole bunch, but the movies, the things of what the rail history, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's a rabbit hole, man. I feel like it. I'm that way about historic things. And when you can ride these rails that were put up so long ago and obviously maintained, right? Um, I think there's something very special. That's what you talk about, the aura at the beginning of the show, David. I think it's nostalgia, and it's where the past and the present meet everything now in the present moment when you're traveling. I think there's something very special. Whereas when you're in the airplane, people have flown through those skies, but you don't know what their tracks are. Historic highways have the same kind of feel as a train route. Then you got to think about why those train routes were there, those rails, who built them, why, what was going on, why are these depots built here, there, and everywhere? Don't start me. I need to get on an Amtrak, apparently. I'm
You
ready.
sound like it too.
I know, I do. I want to. I mean, because all of it brought such prestige to towns across this country to have a railroad depot. And it wasn't just, it was supplies. Um, you know, it was supplies and, God, when you think about even the mining towns of the West, that's how that was one of the prime reasons of rail, was the ore in the West, all the minerals and the gold and the silver and all of that. And then it was, people and everything. But I mean, when you think about what it is today, and now you can be sitting on Amtrak, having a glass of wine and eating some cheese or snacks and whatever, and looking at beautiful views and not having to drive. I'm like, that's pretty darn cool, don't you think? I know you
Yeah.
think that. It is absolutely amazing. So where's your next destination on an Amtrak?
Well, right now that is up in the air. For some time, I was talking about going to Savannah, Georgia, but that maybe have to hold up. And again, I'm not sure. But it all depends on what the magazines think about my story pitches that I sent them. I just again, Passenger Train Journal. They wanted me to do a Trailblazer piece on Amtrak's Palmetto from Newark to Savannah. That's one thing, but I'm pitching stories about the Georgia Queen Riverboat. Also, there's a new haunted attraction in Savannah called Savannah Underground. It's a theatrical reenactment of the darkest hauntings from around town.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's
And that whole
and
area is haunted. It is. It is.
yes,
Savannah is
yes,
haunted.
and there's also a relatively new haunted tour called Dead of Night, which you visit some of the darkest haunted places around town.
Mm,
So
cool.
that's what I'm hoping to get some responses on. But it's all predicated on time.
Yeah, well, that's the way that the world of a travel writer, right? And that's part of why we do these shows too. And I love what the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association does for journalists and for the destinations. How long have you been a member?
With the Amtrak Guest Awards?
No, IFTWA, the International Food Wine Travel Writers
Oh no,
Association.
I've only been a member since 2022.
Oh, okay, cool. And so have you done any of their webinars or anything like that?
No, I have not. I was supposed to do a story on a restaurant in Savannah called Alligator Soul, which their menu selection uh, features alligator meat in much of their entire food selection.
Wow. Wow.
And
So,
on
do-
so when I brought that story idea to their management, to the restaurant's management, they passed up on the opportunity, but maybe they may change their mind this time around. We'll see.
mm, mm. Well, I hope you enjoy your time with IFTWA because I think they do a lot of good things of connecting the writers with the destinations. And everyone, you can go to IFWTWA.org to learn more about the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. They really do work hard to connect the travel writers with the destinations and people within the destinations, whether it's restaurants, wineries, you name it. And their conference is coming up in September, and that will be up in upstate New York in Corning. Can we take a train there to upstate New York from your
Where?
area? They're going to be in Corning and up in Finger Lakes area. So is there an Amtrak
I guess
people can
so.
take? There's got to be.
Well,
You know.
I know it's like near Buffalo, Rochester.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you got
It's
it's a
doable.
little yeah, it's doable. And I mean you got the Erie Canal out there too. So if
Yes,
there's a canal, there's going to be a train.
that's between Albany. Actually, the best place to reach the Erie Canal is around Buffalo. There.
Mm. Well, everyone keep
That's
up
what
with
that,
Dave. Go ahead.
that
Sorry.
that's what that's you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Because the Erie Canal empties into Lake Erie right around there.
Hmm. And normally when there's a canal, there's going to be a train. I think there always seems to be like if one transportation route is there, it breeds another one, you know. I don't know why, because it's like, oh, we got one, but now it's like, oh, it worked. Let's do two. So there always seems to be a train if there's a boat thing. I don't know. Just seems like that. But I didn't build any of it. You know, I really respect the way you're traveling with this. I think it's great. The other thing before you go, David, I wanted to say is I think that Amtrak allows people that have limited accessibility to travel. I think that's also another thing to touch on for travelers, right? If you're elder, maybe even with kids, this could be an easier way of travel, right?
Well, I tell you, it should not be an issue. Amtrak has done a lot of improvements to stations to make them more accessible to the elderly and the handicapped. I know Amtrak has built a brand new station in Buffalo. Their old Exchange Street station used to be a ground platform. They tore that down. They built a brand new state-of-the-art station there in downtown Buffalo. That way, when the train comes in, it's a high platform you walk right on. No more having to stoop up and down.
Hmm.
And even in Kingston Station in Rhode Island, it used to be a ground level platform. And now the train pulls in and you have a high platform. You walk right on and off. Makes
Nice.
life easy.
Yeah, it does. If you want easy travel, right? I think it's cool. The one thing that really opened my eyes more to Amtrak too was that they have a program for there's a National Historic Trail through the National Park Service called the Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail, which that's a rabbit hole for me. It is a expedition that happened before independence in this country.
Hmm.
And it was when Juan Bautista de Anza took over, he was a conquistador from Mexico and took over for his dad it was conquering, Spain wanted in. And he led 200 people on foot from 600 miles through Mexico into Tucson, Arizona area, and all the way up to San Francisco on foot. There was only one death, and that was a lady during childbirth, and that was right outside Tucson
Wow.
at San Xavier del Bac Historic Mission. They walked across the desert. They crossed over the lower Colorado River. I've been to just about every spot now. It's a, it's like I said, it's a rabbit hole passion project. But that's how we got the city of San Francisco. He claimed it, the Presidio there. And it's just, there's such multicultural history that we have. This is a National Historic Trail. And in certain months, Amtrak actually has park rangers do part of that trail. Park rangers are on Amtrak doing actual presentations on Juan Bautista de Anza and the expedition, which I think is pretty cool that they do that, because that is pretty cool,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, the Park Service gets involved in these excursions, which is pretty cool if you don't want to drive the whole thing. And I've gone down weird dirt roads and all kinds of things, which that's personally, I love that. But, honestly, if you want to really explore the history, and you can have park rangers who know that history way better than any of us could, that's going to be that. I've always wanted to do that. Like, that's on my bucket list. Some people's bucket lists are going to Peru or something, but that's on my bucket list for me, because I'm so interested in that history of how these people made it and did it looking for this better life. And, their descendants are all through. Anyway, that's a whole other show. But Amtrak makes that possible for people. And I think that's pretty amazing that they partner with the Park Service that way, the National Park Service. So anyway, everyone, keep up with David. Go to his website and follow his stories at dektraveljournal.com. Again, the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, IFWTWA, is IFWTWA.org. And keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.
It was a true pleasure for me to talk to you all out there. Do keep on going to my website and just keep informed. I had a new article just about every week.
Awesome. And he does. Go look at it. And are you on social media for folks too?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on Facebook. I have a personal page there.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, David, and happy travels to you.
You have a great night, and feel better now.
Thank you.
You take care of yourself.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, featuring members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We encourage you to visit their website. We say IFWTWA, which is IFWTWA.org. You can also follow us at bigblendradio.com. Happy travels, everyone.